My wife cheated with our neighbor, then stole $250, $0 from our joint account during our divorce. Now she's claiming I manipulated her into signing away our house and half the estate, and I just discovered she's been living with him for months. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife cheated on me and stole $250,000 during our divorce. Honestly, the whole thing feels like some bad movie. But I guess that's what it is now, my life turned upside down, and I'm just trying to make sense of it all. It started a few months ago, subtle things at first. Lisa, my wife, she's always been a little high maintenance, but lately she's been acting different. She'd come home late, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, and she'd be defensive when I asked where she'd been. She'd brush it off, say she was working late or out with friends, but I felt like I was losing my grip on what was real. Then came the little things that didn't add up. Her phone kept ringing at odd hours, and she'd hide it quickly when I walked into the room. She started wearing makeup more often, even when she didn't need to. She'd get these strange, distracted looks, like she was planning something she didn't want me to see. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew deep down that something was wrong. One night, I decided to check her phone. I wasn't snooping out of boredom. I had a gut feeling, a terrible suspicion that something was going on. I slipped into the bedroom while she was in the shower, grabbed her phone, and started going through it. What I found made my stomach drop. There were messages, texts, and pictures between her and our neighbor, Mark. Flirty, suggestive stuff, and even worse, plans to meet up. It was clear they'd been seeing each other behind my back for months. I felt like my world was crashing down. I never thought Lisa, my wife, who always played the perfect little housewife, would betray me like this. The worst part was the way she lied when I confronted her. I told her I knew about the messages, and she just laughed, told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. She said Mark was just an old friend, that I was overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure. But I had proof, real proof, and I knew it wasn't just some innocent friendship. That night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing. I kept thinking about the years we spent together, the plans we made, the future I thought we shared. All of it was crumbling, and then I remembered the money. Our joint account, the savings we'd built over the years, the house we bought together. That's when I found out she'd been siphoning money from our account, over $250, $0 gone, just like that. I couldn't believe it. She'd been stealing from me while she was supposedly planning her life with Mark. It was like a punch to the gut. I realized she'd been living a double life, one filled with lies, cheating, and betrayal. I couldn't trust her anymore. I was angry, hurt, and disgusted. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, for thinking she was the woman I married, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I needed to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this, not just the cheating but the theft too. I had to find a way to protect myself, to take back what was mine, and to make sure she paid for what she'd done. That's how I ended up here, trying to piece everything together. I've been gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and planning my next move. I know she's been living with Mark for months now, probably enjoying her new life while I was left to pick up the pieces. The betrayal runs deep, and it's not just about the money or the affair. It's about trust, respect, and the life I thought I had. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I'm done being the victim. It's time to fight back. After everything I found out, I knew I had to act fast. The first thing I did was dig into our bank accounts and financial records more thoroughly. I wasn't just going to let her take my money and walk away. I called our bank and froze the joint account immediately. $250 was a lot of money, and I wasn't about to let her drain it completely before I had a chance to do something. I had a sinking feeling that she'd already transferred some of it, maybe to her accounts or to Mark's. That's when I realized I needed to get a hold of a lawyer, someone who knew what they were doing in cases like this. I found a lawyer who specialized in divorce and financial crimes. When I explained everything, Lisa's affair, the theft, her living with Mark for months, he looked at me like I was describing a crime scene. He told me that what she'd done was technically theft, and that I had a solid case to recover the money. The lawyer also warned me that Lisa might try to manipulate the situation, especially since she was trying to claim I manipulated her into signing away our house and estate. I told him I had all the proof, screenshots, bank statements, texts, and I was ready to fight. Meanwhile, Lisa kept insisting she was innocent. She told me I was crazy, that I was just jealous and paranoid. She claimed Mark was just a friend and the money was all a misunderstanding. That was her usual pattern: deny, lie, spin stories. She even accused me of controlling her, saying I was jealous of her relationship with Mark, which was a total lie. I knew better. I had the evidence, and I was starting to realize how good she was at lying and manipulating. She's a bitchy, self-centered woman who always thinks she can get away with stuff, and now she was trying to paint herself as the victim. I started to piece together how she had been living with Mark for months. I found out from neighbors that they'd been seen coming and going from her house at all hours, sometimes even staying overnight. I felt sick. How could she do this to me, to us? I had trusted her, built a life with her, and she was out there cheating and stealing from me. The betrayal cut deep. I couldn't concentrate at work. I was angry all the time, and I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how I missed all of it. One day, I decided I needed to see her face to face and get some answers. I confronted her at her house. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the theft, her living with Mark. Her reaction was priceless. She looked at me with that fake innocent look like I was the crazy one. She started spinning her usual lies, claiming she was confused, that Mark was just a good friend and that I was overreacting because I was insecure. She said she loved me, but she just needed space and time to figure things out. Yeah, right. That's what she told me while she was living with another man and stealing my money. The thing that pushed me over the edge was when she accused me of manipulating her into signing papers for the house and the estate. That's when I lost my temper. I told her I had the paperwork right here, signed, notarized, legal. I explained that she had signed away her rights under duress, that she was coerced into it. She kept denying it, but I had witnesses who saw her sign those documents. She was trying to spin it, saying I forced her, that I made her sign everything out of anger. That's a lie. She's a master liar, but I wasn't about to let her get away with it. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I had loved her, trusted her, and now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd used me for years. I cried more than once, not just from heartbreak, but from the rage that boiled inside me. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily, cheat so blatantly, steal so much, and then have the audacity to turn around and blame me? I felt broken, but I also knew I had to stand my ground. I couldn't let her win. That night, I stayed up late, going through every piece of evidence I had. I contacted a private investigator to look into her living situation with Mark. I needed proof that she'd been living with him for months, and I wanted photographs, videos, anything that would back up what I already suspected. I couldn't believe how much I'd been blind. I thought I knew her, but now I saw she'd been living a double life right under my nose. The betrayal was worse than I thought, and I knew I had to be prepared for what was coming next. This wasn't just about money or cheating. It's about reclaiming my life from someone who'd used me and discarded me like trash. The more I dug into her life with Mark, the clearer it became how deep her deception went. I hired the private investigator, and within days he came back with photos and videos. There she was, Lisa, living with Mark, staying overnight, cooking dinners, even going out together in broad daylight. It was all right there. The pictures showed her with his arm around her, smiling like they were a couple, not just friends. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. She managed to hide this from me for months, and I was supposed to believe she was innocent all along. Seeing those images, I realized that the woman I'd loved and trusted had been lying to my face for years. She wasn't just cheating, she was living a whole secret life. I couldn't understand how she had the nerve to keep up this act, to lie so convincingly. The betrayal cut so deep that I started questioning everything: my judgment, my memories, even the years we spent together. I kept asking, Myself, how did I miss all this? How could I be so blind? I knew I needed to confront her again, but this time with proof. I arranged to meet her at her house, knowing full well she'd be living with Mark. When she saw me, her face flickered with surprise, then quickly shifted into that bitchy smirk she always wears when she's trying to manipulate someone. I pulled out the photos on my phone and laid them on the table. Her eyes widened for a second. Then she tried to brush it off, saying it was all a mistake, that she was just helping Mark out, that she never meant for me to find out. I didn't buy her bullshit anymore. I told her I knew she'd been lying, living with Mark, stealing my money, and that I had proof. She started crying, but it was fake tears, those crocodile tears she's perfected over the years. She claimed I was overreacting, that I was paranoid and jealous. She said I'd driven her to this, that I was a controlling asshole who pushed her away. That was her usual tactic, blame everyone but herself. She even said Mark was just a friend, that she was trying to help him through a rough patch, which was laughable. She'd been living with him for months, and she expected me to believe that was just friendship. I felt numb. All the anger I'd been holding inside boiled over. I told her that I was done, that I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulation, and her betrayal. I told her I was going to take everything back, my money, my house, my dignity. I couldn't believe I'd wasted so many years with someone who was capable of this level of deception. The thing that hurt the most was knowing she'd been living this lie right under my nose while I was out there working, trying to build a future for us. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt like I was losing my mind. I was angry, yes, but also devastated. How could she do this? How could she turn against me so completely? I kept replaying all the signs I missed. Her secretive phone calls, her late nights, the way she'd look at Mark when she thought I wasn't watching. It all made sense now. She'd been grooming this new life with Mark, planning her escape while I was clueless, thinking everything was fine. That night I stayed up thinking about everything, the lies, the theft, the betrayal. I realized I had to make some tough decisions. I couldn't stay with someone who lied to me, cheated on me, and stolen from me. I knew I had to start the process of ending this nightmare. I contacted my lawyer again and told him I was ready to proceed with the divorce and to fight for the money she stole. I also wanted to make sure she'd be held accountable for her actions, especially the theft and the fraud she committed by signing away our house and estate under false pretenses. But even as I prepared to fight, I couldn't shake the feeling of sadness. I'd loved her once. I'd wanted to believe we had a future. Now I saw that I'd been living a lie, and the person I thought I knew didn't exist. It's a strange mix of anger and heartbreak, angry at her, yet mourning the loss of what I thought was a real marriage. I kept asking myself if I could ever trust anyone again, or if I'd just become someone who always watched. They're back, forever suspicious. In the end, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to expose her, not just for my own sake, but also to prevent her from hurting anyone else. She's a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with everything. But I've learned that sometimes the truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, it's brutal. I'm just trying to survive it piece by piece and figure out what comes next. The more I uncovered about Lisa's life with Mark, the clearer it became how much she'd been manipulating everyone around her. I had the pictures, the videos, the bank statements. Everything pointed to her living a double life for months. I couldn't believe how blind I'd been, how I let her get away with so much. I started to realize she'd been planning her escape long before I even suspected anything. She had her story ready, her lies meticulously crafted, and her new life with Mark was her secret world. Once I had the evidence, I knew I had to confront her again. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. I arranged to meet her at her house, expecting her to be there with Mark. When I arrived, she was surprised, but that fake smirk was still there. She thought she could keep lying, keep pretending I didn't know the truth. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos and videos, watching her face drain of color. Her eyes darted around, trying to come up with an excuse, but I didn't give her the chance. "Lisa," I said, voice cold but steady, "I know you've been living with Mark for months. I know about the affair, the theft, everything. You've been lying to my face, and I've had enough. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She started to cry, those crocodile tears again, and tried to spin some story about how she was just helping Mark out, how they were just friends, and how I was paranoid. I cut her off. I told her I had proof, real proof, and I wasn't going to sit here and listen to her lies anymore. She looked at me with that bitchy, manipulative expression. "You don't understand," she said through her fake tears. I was confused. "Mark helped me see things differently. You don't know what I've been going through. You're just jealous, insecure, and controlling." That's her favorite line: blame everyone else, pretend she's the victim. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her she was a liar, a thief, and a cheat. I told her I was done pretending I didn't see the truth. I felt this rush of cold anger. I told her I'd been supporting her, loving her, trusting her, and she'd thrown it all away. I explained that I was going to take back everything she stole: our house, our savings, anything she had gained through her lies. I told her I'd be fighting for a divorce, and I'd make sure she paid for her betrayal. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me or anyone else anymore. Her reaction was to shift into her usual defensive mode, claiming she was doing her best, that she loved me, and that I was just being difficult. She said she was sorry. Sorry for what? For living her double life, for stealing, for lying to my face. Sorry for turning everything upside down. Sorry for her betrayal. No, I didn't buy it. Sorry does fix what she did. Sorry doesn't erase the years she wasted cheating and stealing from me. That night, I stayed up late again, going over every detail. I contacted my lawyer, told him I was ready to move forward with the divorce and to start the process of recovering the money. I also hired a forensic accountant to help trace where the stolen funds went. It was clear she'd tried to hide her tracks, but I was determined to find every penny. I knew she'd try to spin her way out of it, but I had the truth on my side. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, why I didn't see it sooner. I'd always trusted her, always believed in us. Now that trust was shattered, and I was left with nothing but the cold reality that my wife had been living a lie, with Mark, stealing from me, and tearing my life apart piece by piece. But as much pain as I felt, I also knew I had to start rebuilding. I realized I couldn't stay in this toxic situation anymore. I needed to cut ties, protect myself, and move on. I started planning my next steps, getting the house appraised, preparing legal documents, and figuring out how to fight for what's rightfully mine. I knew I had a long road ahead, but I also knew I couldn't let her win. Not after everything she'd done. I had to be strong for myself, and for the future I still hoped to have. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal meetings, gathering evidence, and trying to keep my emotions in check. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer, going over every detail of her deceit and plotting my next move. I knew Lisa would fight tooth and nail to keep what she stole, and I had to be prepared for her typical manipulative tactics. She's the kind of person who twists everything around to make herself look like the victim, even when she's the one in the wrong. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this one. I also started to dismantle the life she'd built with Mark. I had the house appraised, and it was worth a good deal more than she claimed. It was. I realized she'd been trying to hide her true financial situation, probably to make it harder for me to recover my fair share. I also reached out to the bank to get detailed statements on where the stolen money went. It was shocking how many transfers and withdrawals she'd made in just a few months. She'd been squirreling away the cash, probably planning her escape for a long time. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and sadness every time I thought about her lying to me, living with Mark, and stealing from our joint account. It was like I was grieving the loss of the wife I thought I knew. I kept replaying our memories, trying to find a way to make sense of how everything had gone so wrong. The betrayal hit me hard, especially knowing she'd been so good at hiding it all. I'd been a fool for trusting her so blindly. One night I decided to confront her one last time before the official legal proceedings started. I went to her house, knowing she'd be there with Mark. When I arrived, she was surprisingly calm, almost smug. She tried to act like nothing was wrong, but I laid out everything I knew. I showed her the evidence, the bank statements, the photos. I told her I was done being played for a fool. I told her I'd be fighting for my rights and she'd regret ever crossing me. Her response was classic Lisa: deflect, deny, blame me. She claimed I was controlling, that I'd pushed her into the arms of Mark, and that I'd always been insecure. She said she loved me but needed freedom, and that I was just too jealous. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her she was full of shit, that her love was nothing but a lie, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I told her I'd see her in court and I'd make sure she paid for her lies and theft. That moment was a turning point. I realized I had to put an end to her games, no matter how painful it was. I couldn't keep letting her twist everything around, pretending she was innocent. The truth was out, and I had to stand firm. I knew I'd face a lot of resistance, but I was ready. I'd fight for my rights, for my peace of mind, and for the money she'd stolen. I was tired of being the victim, tired of her lies, and tired of feeling like I was drowning in her deception. The emotional toll was still heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. I'd loved her once, and now I was left with nothing but bitterness. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally taking control of my life again. I was no longer going to be manipulated or lied to. This was my fight, and I was going to see it through to the end. I knew that no matter what, I had to protect myself and get justice. As I prepared for the legal battles ahead, I learned something crucial: trust is fragile. Once broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I can handle betrayal and I can stand up for myself. I just hope that anyone else going through something similar learns to see the signs early. Because once someone shows you who they really are, it's better to walk away than to stay and get hurt even more. I've got a long road ahead, but I'm ready to fight for what's mine and finally close this chapter of my life. The final stretch of this mess has been a brutal lesson in trust and betrayal. After months of legal battles, evidence gathering, and sleepless nights, I finally managed to get a court order to freeze the remaining assets and start the process of reclaiming what's rightfully mine. Lisa's lies caught up with her faster than she expected. The judge saw through her manipulations and false claims, especially once we presented the irrefutable proof of her living with Mark and the stolen money. Her attempts to spin it as some kind of emotional crisis fell flat. The truth was too clear. The divorce was finalized a few weeks ago. She got nothing. No house, no money, no control over my life anymore. The judge awarded me back the full amount of the stolen $250, $0 plus interest, and I've been working with the bank to recover what I can from her accounts and any assets she tried to hide. It's not about the money anymore, though. It's about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. Looking back, I realize how much I was blind to her manipulations. She's a master at lying, twisting facts, and playing the victim. But I also learned that the truth always surfaces eventually, and no lie can hide forever. I've become a lot more cautious about who I trust and how I handle my affairs. I've also learned to listen to my gut, because if I'd paid attention earlier, I might have spared myself a lot of pain. As for Lisa, she's living with Mark now, trying to start fresh, but I doubt she's happy. The way she lied, stole, and betrayed everything we had, she's left a trail of destruction behind her. I don't hate her, but I definitely don't trust her anymore. I do feel a sense of relief, though, knowing I stood up for myself, fought for what was mine, and finally closed that chapter. The most important thing I've learned is that betrayal cuts deep, but you can survive it. You can come out the other side stronger if you refuse to be a victim forever. I don't wish her harm, but I do hope she finally faces the consequences of her actions. As for me, I'm taking some time to heal, rebuild, and focus on myself. I'm not rushing into anything new, just taking it day by day. To anyone out there dealing with similar betrayal, my advice is simple. Gather your evidence, don't be afraid to fight for what's right, and never doubt your instincts. The truth might be painful, but it's always better to face it head-on than to live in denial. Trust is fragile. Once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But you can rebuild your life, piece by piece, stronger than before. And in the end, that's what matters most.